half an hour to go. I smoked.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
Today we're looking at the Bartje200 mountain bike marathon, a 200-kilometer long race over single tracks, forest trails, gravel, some asphalt, but a lot of loose sand. Very, very loose sand.
Hoe dan?
This race is held in Drenthe, a province in the north of the Netherlands. The course twists and turns all over the place, but it was pretty much the same from past years, and since this is the third time I'm entering this race, I start to get familiar with most segments. There's only little elevation from some small hills on the single track, but no distinct climbs in this race whatsoever, which is pretty normal for our Dutch standards. What was not normal was the drought that we had prior to this race. This was certainly the driest edition I've done so far. The bike I'm racing is the BH Lynx Race Evo, a full suspension bike built to be light and fast. I raced a cross-country race on this bike earlier this year, which reminded me of the importance of the tire pressure, especially for these dry conditions. Prior to the race, I did a few test runs to figure it out. In this race, I was riding at only 1.1 bar in the front and 1.2 bar in the back. The bike only has one bottle cage, so I had to adjust my nutrition strategy from last year, where I hid a few bottles in a bag next to the trails. This year, I chose to ride with a 3-liter hydration pack from the start. Filling that up with Martin together with the bidon in my bike would provide me 7 hours of fluid. On the contrary to previous years, I started in the front today, and I carried a chain breaker and a quick link if I would break my chain again. And with the camelback, I didn't need to stop at any feed zone. I thought of everything and was ready for battle. But was it enough?
Usually you tend to kind of forget the really shitty part of certain days, but I think this was the hardest race out of the 3 I've done.
Yesterday.
I'm just getting in my last meal of today. I've been stacking carbs all day long, and after this I'm gonna get everything ready for tomorrow and try to go to bed relatively early because tomorrow the start is at 7 o'clock. I rented this mobile home. You can see I'm stepping up in luxury standards here because this is the Colorado 23X10. It's a pity. I was supposed to be here with Daisy and the kids, but they got sick. All 3 of them aren't feeling very well. Usually like a day or 2 after I get sick, so I really hope for the best for tomorrow's race. This is the kit for tomorrow. I've got new shoes, the Vapor G. Almost brand new. I have used them for a little bit to test them out. They've been in the oven. And then my SIROKO kit. I'm using the BX bib shorts because the BX has a slightly thicker pad than the SRX, so I really like that for longer races. Not sure if I'm gonna wear a base layer. And then this is a new color jersey, SRX. Really like that, so I'm gonna wear that. Obviously gloves. My POC helmet, gray, because it fits the rest of my outfit. And then I have this green lens with the gray frame, Cycling Fanatic socks. That's the backpack. Heart rate strap is in my shoe, so I don't have to look for anything tomorrow morning.
Early the next morning.
3, 2, 1 en
That's the start of this race. 200 kilometers over very different terrain. There's single track, but there's a lot of straight roads, but also a lot of cornering. So there's a choice: mountain bike or gravel bike, or actually beach bike. There's guys riding gravel bikes and beach bikes. There's guys riding cyclocross bikes. One thing was very important today, that was the tires and the tire pressure. Last year I made a video about the Slag om Norg, which I did on my gravel bike, and my tire pressure was way too high and I had relatively narrow tires compared to the mountain bikes, and it was the same dry conditions. And this was their experimental for my performance because of the very loose sand. Start of the race is always fast. There was going to be roads like this, double track. There was going to be a little bit of asphalt, and at the 24k mark we would hit the first single track, which was the first very, very important moment of this race. When I say easy, it's kind of relative, because here on the tarmac we're doing close to 50k an hour on the mountain bikes. Guys are already shuffling into position, and as we take a right corner here, we get on this super dry forest trail, and the chaos is already starting. You can see guys are struggling through this loose sand. I'm trying to find a line here on the left. Guys are overtaking, almost crashing. It's super, super loose, as you can see. And I found that actually riding through the soft sand worked really, really well. Really rough threads on your tires are not gonna work. So the smoothest tire, you can almost ride a slick in these conditions. Guys, we're riding slicks actually, which will be the fastest through sand like this, but you also need a little bit of grip on those single tracks. I don't think there is a perfect bike for this race. Some guys would perform very well on a gravel bike with wider tires, and other guys would do better on the mountain bike. It really depends on how skilled you are and what your preference is, but wide tires today was the key. There's two other guys I see right now with a camelback, with these hydration backpacks. The rest was not. So a lot of these guys had support in the feed zones, and they would get the bottles as they would pass through. So that was going to be a key factor as well. I really need to find somebody that can help me in these races. So here a guy in red, white and blue through the middle. He shows up out of nowhere. Henk Jaap Moorlach. Yeah, he's the Dutch champion mountain bike in the amateur category, I think, or in the masters. Really fast guy. Saw him a few weeks before this race on a mountain bike street race. This guy used to be mountain bike professional, and now he's riding with us. So he takes the front, and he was riding in the front for a long time. Until now the pace was high, but not as crazy as I've seen it before. I could stay close to the front pretty easily, and I wasn't wasting a lot of energy. 2 years ago, I got behind a very big, slow group on the first single track, so that really slowed me down. Last year, I got in around position 10 on the first single track, and it broke up in front of me, so I had to chase really hard to get back. So this year, I knew what I had to do. Stay in the front. That's the mission. Right now, it's still easy. Guys are constantly trying to overtake and stay in the first little bit of the race. So if you're not moving up, you're moving back. So you need to constantly be aware that you're not moving back too far. So stay in the first 20 riders, plus or minus, and then you'll be okay. On the right side here, you can see the sand road, and you can see how dry it is. We could still avoid this one by riding on the bike lane, but there was going to be so much of this that we had to actually ride over. It's going to be a really, really tough day. Right here, we're getting close to the single track, and the tension is rising. You can see guys are already going through the berms to get to the front. The speed was increasing, and it was full race mode right now. I'm staying to the left side so you can maintain position and move up if you want to. There's a right 180 turn coming up, which I really remember from last year. Onto the high grass. I made it through without crashing, and I'm in a very good position. Just trying to move up a little bit more right now, because it's going to get very narrow after this. This part was getting hectic and super fast. I'm recognizing the guys in front of me. Everybody knew the single track was coming up and was gonna push it hard to get to the front. It will always break up on these single tracks, so the more guys in front of you, the more you're risking to ending behind a gap. Especially with these bunch of gravel bikers in front of me who usually don't go as fast on the single tracks. So I just had to move up. So I just went around these guys in this corner, and right here my suspension is helping me keeping my momentum. I just roll past these riders and I get in third position, which is perfect for this race. I aim to be here at the top 5, so Third position is pretty good. We've got the red, white and blue in the front, and then Jeff Verkuijl, and then Gerrit Bosman, the guy who's trying to get in front of me here. He's riding his cyclocross bike. He's really skilled, but he just chose the wrong bike today, so I do not want him in front of me. Getting onto the single track right now in third wheel. I thought it was a perfect position. Nothing could go wrong. Well, I thought. Jeff riding on his beach bike on the single track was not so fast. So basically, he was sort of keeping up the entire group and letting the first guy just ride away. And he wasn't even pushing it that hard. At first, I figured this wouldn't be a big deal because I could stay where I was, I could go easy, save a little bit of energy, and it was still a very long way to go to the finish. And with everybody behind me, we could easily catch up on this guy. However, this wasn't the case. At this point, the first guy was out of sight, and I was still kind of relaxed, thinking we'd catch back up with him sometime in the next 5 hours. I didn't want to ride in the front to spend too much energy right now. However, Jeff wasn't pushing that hard either, unless someone wanted to overtake him so he would keep his position. So at this stage was kind of where I missed the action. I failed to recognize this guy on the left in blue, Tom Bonder. He's one of the top riders in the country and he's won races like this multiple times. In this case, I saw him as another gravel bike rider and I misjudged the situation as he took the front and started hammering it as we turned on to the next little bit of single track. With Jeff and Gerrit on their gravel bikes in front of me, not able to follow, he got a gap and he took off. This kid in blue, Jens Wellens, he joined the party and he was aware of what was happening. He started to increase the pace really hard, and as we overtook the other two guys on their gravel bikes, we got rid of them really quick.
We zijn al los hoor. Ja man, lekker.
And contrary to myself, at that moment Jens did know who Tom was and saw him take off. And now it was a 2 against 2 battle to chase these guys. About 45k in the race. A couple of these other guys joined us again. So we were a bigger group of about 10 riders. We had about 30 seconds on the first two guys in front of us right now. And also these gravel bikers, they managed to rejoin with us.
Last year broke my chain on that bridge. So far so good.
Rolling through the feed zone here and nobody stops. In these races you either bring somebody to give you a bottle, or you take a backpack like me, or you hide your bottle somewhere in the bushes where you can grab them at a good moment, or you don't drink, or you need to stop, but then the rest will continue. So it's a kind of a difficult situation. Blazing through the feed zone gives me the opportunity to talk about my nutrition plan for this race. On big races like this, I use the Eat My Ride app to plan my food. not only during the race itself, but also before and even on the day before the race to plan my carb loading. The ad will give you an advice on how much carbohydrates you should be eating the day before. For the race itself, by planning it and putting in your estimate heart rate or normalized power, it will calculate the amount of carbohydrates that you're going to be burning. As all my nutrition was liquid in the form of Martin powder and gels, my 3-liter backpack was worth $1 million right now. But using the Camelback instead of bottles raised another challenge. I simply didn't know how much I was actually consuming. Normally I would take a bottle each hour, which is easy to keep track of. In the week prior to the race, I tested how many sips from the backpack would equal 1 bottle. So during the race I would count them to keep track on how much I was drinking.
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, that's a nice plan, but very difficult to execute as I lost count after a few hours. I tried to put in my intake on my head unit, but even then I just completely lost track. This is about 90k in the race. We're 3 hours in and the group is still together, but we haven't been able to catch the 2 leaders. And it's not going slow. It's really fast race on this point. And we're with quite a big group, as you can see right now. We're approaching a very difficult section. Super loose sand and 2 mountain bikers up front. One of them is Adna Koster in red and then one guy in black and green. They managed to ride away. The guy in 3rd place, he wasn't able to keep up. So the first 2 ride off and that's where another break happened. And I know I'm complaining about these guys on gravel bikes, but actually I just had to be in a better position. But that's easier said than done. You know, those guys, they knew it so well that every time there was a hard, difficult section or a single tech coming up or a more technical section, they would come up, push hard and then move up to the front quickly just to slow the pace down. The knowledge of the course was super important, and sometimes I knew stuff was coming up but I was just too late to get into a good position. And right now you can see it. The first 2 guys are rolling off and the 3rd guy is a gravel bike rider, Gerrit-Jan. He's not keeping up. It's really difficult to go around it because there's one very narrow trail and everything else is super loose, so to go around it will cost so much energy, it's almost impossible to do at this speed. By the way, it's so difficult to keep your bike upright in these conditions. Super soft, super narrow. We've got bushes on one side, so one little mistake and your bike just starts wobbling all over the place. You really have to trust on the guy in front of you as well, because we're going at high speeds. You can't really see where you're going sometimes. Right here we dug very deep. Jens was overtaking and I followed him because I knew he was gonna accelerate. He makes a little mistake, just like I was explaining. So I overtake the lead and I go full gas, trying to close this gap to the 2 guys in front of us. You can still see them riding right there. You do not let this go for too long or the gap will get bigger and bigger and you can never close it down. So if something happens like this, you need to react fast and close it as soon as possible. But it may already be too late. It's super hot. I'm already getting tired. I can't just ride full gas for the rest of the race. So I have to pace myself, trying to take a pull and then some recovery. So here I'm letting a few other guys overtake me and then try to, you know, hook onto the back of that little pack. And then the pace starts going down. So right at that moment I realized that this guy in black and green in the front is the teammate of the guy that just rode away, and so does Dylan in front of me. So he pushes hard, probably out of frustration. He swacks his bike in front of the guy and almost takes him out. Pretty crazy. I tried to follow and get in his wheel, but I just wasn't in time until it got very narrow again. And Dylan, he's at the front just hammering it really hard. So we're flying through this super narrow single track right now, and this is full focus. It's so narrow. We've got corners left and right. One little mistake, just flying over the bars into these freaking bushes. So very hard section right now.
Goed naar de kloten.
Goed naar de kloten. That means I'm pretty fucked up. 122 kilometers in this race.
We got 2 leaders at 1 minute, and one guy is still ahead of us.
The 2 stayed away, so the podium spots are now given. Unless we're gonna make it up and chase him back. But usually that doesn't happen. All these guys were putting in big efforts to keep up the pace. But it was getting hotter and hotter during the day. Right now it was over 30 degrees Celsius, which is super hot for Dutch standards. It was dry, it was a hard race, so I was getting pretty tired. So sometimes, like this moment, I managed to get in front on a piece of single track, and I saw Jens in my wheel and then the gravel bikers behind it. So these were the moments that I just pushed it super hard to put pressure on this group, maybe to tire them out, maybe to get rid of them, maybe to break up that elastic band. But these were matches that were burnt, man. At the end, it's all about who can go the longest, who can ride hard for the entire 200 kilometers, and at some point you're done, you're smashed, you're either too tired. 2 years ago I got massive cramps, but last year I felt actually pretty good till the end of the race. Depends on your form of that day as well. Right now I was just trying to go as hard as I could on these single tracks while I was at the front. Feed zone number 3 here. Gerrit-Jan goes to the left to fill up, and I had my backpack, so I thought I would be okay, and I kept going. After all, it would have been smarter for me to stop and fill up some extra. I just didn't know it yet. It did give me a little bit of margin to change my GoPro battery during the race.
Battery change. The group is a bit smaller, 7 guys left. 140 in the race. Dude, I'm smashed. Really tired.
So at this point, it's still 60k to go, at least 2 hours, while being already over 5 hours in the race. The heat started to take its toll on me, and I just didn't have anything extra than just to stay in the wheels of these guys and try to follow. The amount of fatigue I felt just increased so fast in the last hour, and some of the hardest loose sand sectors were coming up. And you can only move forward by pushing hard and aiming for those good lines. And if you make a mistake, you have to step off the bike. And I was at the back of the back, so not the best spot in case somebody makes a mistake.
Oh man.
One guy needs to step off the bike and we just get held up only so slightly, and that's it. I lose the flow, and as you can see, 3 guys in front of me, they maintain their momentum and they ride away from us. Dylan, Giel and Yuri. I looked those names up in the results. I don't know everybody's name during this race. And it's so close. They're so close. But to close this gap is so hard.
Come on.
My heart rate was going through the roof. I was pushing as hard as I could, and this sand is just holding you back. It's just dragging you down. It's crazy. On the tarmac, speeds go up, and I just didn't have anything left to give that extra push to jump towards this guy. Sometimes a gap can be so small, if you're not able to close it, that's it. Game over.
Single track. Come up, Jasper. Focus, focus.
So here we're sort of on the single track again, and I tried to keep up the pace high, but it was getting harder and harder. My legs are just screaming pain. And now with these 3 guys gone again, it was just me and Jens to try and keep up that pace. And still very important to keep focus on these single tracks. Here's a little bit of tarmac, which is so nice to just do a steady effort. And you can see my hose dangling from my backpack. That's the hose that I've been drinking from all day. By this time, I should have gone through pretty much all the 3 liters of Martin. But I had no way to know how much I drank since I lost count of my 1 million sips that I had to take. I only trained for 1 long ride with the backpack, so I just didn't know how to manage it. So the backpack should be almost empty, but it actually felt quite full. To make the situation even worse is actually that my plan of taking only 500 milliliters of fluid per hour was actually not sufficient at all. That's just what I had been doing for the last years, but I never tested my actual sweat rate. It wasn't until well after this race that I realized that I've been underhydrating a lot on this day. Eat My Ride recently implemented a sweat rate test feature in their app, and that's how I found it out. You can do this on a few different training rides at different temperatures. For me, at about 30-degree heat, I sweated 1400 milliliters per hour, and that was just at an easy endurance pace. In this race, we raced much higher intensity, so it must have been more than that. By the time I reached 6 hours in the race, I just drank everything that was left in the backpack, and it must have been at least a full bottle. So, on my already underhydrated plan, I also drank too little because I just couldn't keep track of it. Big mistake for this race. If anybody has a good tip on how to manage this, please share it in the comments. Back to the race.
Fucking hell. Ja, die space achter ons. Dit is mijn favoriete stukje van de hele wedstrijd.
as we were suffering on. There was a little bit of single track coming up again, so I was trying to make up some ground by hitting it hard.
I want to try and catch those 2-3 guys. It's gonna be really tough. There's 3 on my tail.
So Gerrit-Jan managed to ride back together with Jens. And I must say, he's got the skills, man, on his cyclocross bike. Very, very good job. Here we're approaching feed zone number 4. You see Jens is getting some bottles from the sidelines. The idea was that Daisy was going to be there with the kids. And she would be able to give me like a bottle or 2 throughout the race. But since they were sick, they couldn't come. It really does make a difference. The most fun part of this race must have been the single track here at Gieten. I remember this exactly from last year. Super fun. And this was our chance to get rid of Mr. Cyclocross bike Gerrit-Jan. If me and Jens would be hammering in the front, he was not going to be able to follow us on these single tracks. Although he's got some skills. But the difference between a mountain bike and a cyclocross bike or a gravel bike on single track is big. And you need to be one crazy skilled rider to be able to keep up the pace with a mountain bike when he goes full gas. But again, I mistimed my position. So I wanted to be at the front here, but I wasn't. So I had to wait for the same location as last year to overtake. So right here, the exact same location as last year, we overtake and we step on it and we lost him in no time. From that point on, me and Jens really worked super hard together, taking pulls and trying to go as fast as we could to maybe catch up with those guys. And then all of a sudden, behind us, we see the guy in red, white and blue, Henk Jaap. Apparently, he took a wrong exit somewhere. He was riding in first position, he took a wrong turn, missed the whole route and he ended up behind us.
Wat is er gebeurd? Hij reed toch op kop?
Hij reed toch kop en spier?
Oh, kut.
Ja, toen brak de vier ook wel een beetje. Dat is niet meer.
Ja, wij rijden voor plek 6, 7 of zo.
Nou, we zijn allebei toch gaar met een frietje.
De koek is hier ook wel een beetje op.
Ja, ja. Even wel even tegen het kop.
Fijn.
So we start talking to him about how this race went and which position we were riding. He offered to, you know, take a pull. Him taking a pull in the front sounds great, but it actually ended up in a disaster for me.
Fuck. Kutzooi. I'm choking. With this guy driving at the pace, my legs are collapsing. Cramps again in my hamstrings. I've got 25k to go, but I can't keep up. I have to slow down a little bit. Try to get my legs to recover a bit. I can't keep this up. Come on.
I just wanna tell you that. No, all of my friends say, girl, you better take care. Cause that man is trouble, you best beware. And go deep down, I know I might be headed for tears.
Third time I'm racing this race. I really recognize stuff from the previous 2 times. I also recognize the absolute pain in my legs. Oh, nice.
In this part of the race, I was just empty, exhausted, cramped up, and then you just get confronted with more of this very, very loose sand. And the only way to ride through it properly is by pushing hard and keeping some speed. But I just didn't have it anymore.
Waarom doe ik dit ook alweer? Holy smokes. Midden.
Cause I love you, I love you, I love you. No, no, no.
Hoe dan?
And then this guy just flies by me. He does it the right way. That's what I'm talking about. Push hard, keep momentum. You'll be able to clear it so much faster. But if you slow down and your tires start digging, the sand just seemed endless. And I had no chance to recover at all.
It just doesn't fucking stop. Holy f***. Half an hour to go. I f***ing smoked.
From this point on, I had no other option than just to keep moving. Not push too hard because my legs would just literally lock up from the cramps, but just hard enough to keep on moving. And I could feel my legs actually, you know, coming back. The cramps were slowly going away. In the previous years, in this part of the race, I was battling other guys and thinking about my finishing strategy. Right now, I was just a lonely ranger in the forest, trying to go as fast as I could, just trying to finish this freaking race. But at least right now I was able to move my legs again. So I don't know what's going on in my body, how these cramps just come and then go again. The same thing happened to me 2 years ago. In this case, because of the heat as well, probably the amount of water, the amount of fluid that I was drinking during the race wasn't enough. But just the intensity of a race like this, 7 hours of hard racing, accelerations, single tracks, you know, battling other guys, it just takes a toll on your body. No matter how much you eat, how much you drink, at some point you're just gonna break.
Squeezing the sponge to the last drop. There's the guy in red, white and blue.
So after a while I actually caught back on Henk Jaap again, the guy in red, white and blue. He didn't seem to be really happy. I think he was really done for the day and he was kind of cruising pretty chill. And I was still trying to go as fast as I could because who knows what other guys are doing. Somebody could break a chain, somebody could have a flat tire, somebody could break down mentally or physically. And this is just the last little push I had in my body. So here we go to the finish for the 3rd time, and my GoPro SD card was full, so I grabbed my phone to get this shot because, dude, everything for the video, and I just approached the finish by myself, so there wasn't any reason to start sprinting whatsoever. I was just happy that I made it. I was completely exhausted, just dead.
Ook helemaal moe gestreden.
I'm fucked up. 7 hours, 17. Hey, I don't know what position I'm at, but 100% wasted. I think this was the hardest race out of the 3 I've done. It was so loose. It got quite hot at the end. I'm just smoked. There's some sand in my shoe. I need some food.
Epilogue.
I'm gonna take a shower and then I'll tell you what my finishing position was. It's a Radler without alcohol. My back is hurting, my legs are hurting, my ass is hurting, my hands are really hurting. Crazy enough, last year I broke my chain, stopped for 6 minutes and I got 7th. The year before I had 400 riders in front of me, I overtook everybody and I got, what was it, 12th? And now I had everything right. I had the perfect position in the first 2 hours and I get 8th. My preparation was on point, but you never know what happens on the day itself. It was a very tough day. The bike performed very well actually. No issues at all. On to the next one, which is L'Étape de Tour in Denmark. 300-kilometer race across Denmark, and we're racing for the green jersey that day. So, see you there. En nou inpakken naar huis.